Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens. Finally, please can everyone ensure that background noise is kept to a minimum and that mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you tell us about apologies for absence and substitute members?
Of course, Chair. We have apologies for this meeting from Councillors Chapman, Law, Dower and Martin, and we have Councillor Patrick Canavan substituting for Councillor Dower, Councillor George Farquhar for Councillor Martin and Councillor Tony Trent for Councillor Chapman Law.
Thank you. So I'll just ask everyone present as in an official capacity to introduce themselves. My name is Marion Lepedvin. I'm Chair of the Western Planning Committee and chairing this meeting.
Councillor Jo Clements, Penhill Ward and Vice Chair of this committee.
Councillor John Challoner, Camford Cliffs Ward.
Councillor Patrick Canavan, Boscombe West. Here is a substitute.
Cameron Adams, Councillor for Kinson.
Councillor George Farquhar, proud representative for Boscombe East and Folkestone, and here is a substitute today.
Councillor Tony Trent, Alderney and Bourne Valley, and here is a substitute.
Kate Salmon, Councillor for Moordown.
Peter Sidaway from Broadstone.
Brian Hitchcock from Hamworthy.
And we also have officers present. You've already heard from Claire Johnson, our Democratic Services Officer, and for planning we have
Sophia Dykes, Planning Officer.
Monica Kwiatkowska, DM Team Leader in the West Team. And Katie Harrington, Development Management Manager.
Thank you, everybody. So, have any members got any declarations of interest about this item on the agenda? No? If anything occurs to you while we're proceeding, feel free to say it then. In fact, please do say it then. So we move on to item 4, the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Is everybody happy to accept these as a true record? Thank you. I hear a few yeps, or yeses and nods and things. Not that you can hear a nod. So we'll move on to the business on the agenda. As you know, there's only one item today, 31 Springfield Crescent. So first of all, the presenting officer will talk about the application. Then we have 2 people speaking an objection, the applicant and the ward councillor who called it in. 2 of these will be online, 2 in person. So, and then we move on to questions from the members of the committee about what we've heard, seen, read, and then finally the discussion and the vote as to whether to accept or not. So I'll hand over to Sophia Dykes to do the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The application before you today is at 31 Springfield Crescent in Poole. This is a household application with the description of development reading, demolition of existing conservatory, removal of existing roof, addition of new first floor with pitched roof, and the remodelling of the existing building to include fenestration and internal changes. Here is a location plan. The site is indicated by the red pin there. This is a closer up location plan showing the plot sizes and the boundaries of the site. It's highlighted in yellow. Got an aerial view image here. The site is indicated by that red arrow. Downsy Close is to the rear of the property. These dwellings here. Got some site photos on the left. This is the front elevation, and on the right, this is the rear elevation as visible from Downsy Close. The photo on the left here indicates the relationship between the site and its neighbour, number 29, Springfield Crescent, and on the right, the relationship with number 33, Springfield Crescent. This is a photo of the street scene when stood outside the application site looking north. up the hill of Springfield Crescent. Evidenced in this photo are several modern alterations which have been carried out in recent years, as seen here at number 27, number 19, number 17, and then opposite as well at number 14. The street scene is considered to be evolving. This is a photo of the street scene when stood outside the application site looking southwest or down the hill of Springfield Crescent. The dwellings along this stretch of the street are predominantly single-storey or chalet bungalows. A bit more on the character of the area. This is number 27, Springfield Crescent, which is 2 dwellings to the north. Consent was given in 2021 to convert, which was a chalet bungalow, to a 2-storey dwelling, and it's considered this is comparable to this application. Number 27 is also set between 2 single-storey bungalows. This image here is showing a relationship between the site and its immediately adjacent neighbours. So between the site and number 33, there's a 5-metre separation distance. This is excluding the garage. Between the site and number 29 is 6.5 metres, also excluding the garage. And then between the site and 3A Dante Close is 16 metres, measuring from the closest points. There is relevant planning history on this site. Last year, a similar application was made and refused for 2 reasons. The first reason for refusal reads, the proposed scheme would fail to respect and relate to the existing building and local patterns of development and would not preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the street scene of Springfield Crescent and Danzy Close by virtue of its overall design and appearance. This reason related to the predominantly flat roof design of the dwelling, which was considered to not reflect local patterns of development and therefore would not have enhanced or preserved the character and appearance of the street scene, contrary to policy PP27. The second reason reads, the proposed scheme would have a material or harmful impact upon the privacy and amenities of the occupants of the neighbouring properties by means of overlooking. This reason related to windows and a balcony on the rear elevation that would have resulted in harmful overlooking to neighbouring properties. This application is a resubmission of this refused scheme, which proposes an amended design to respond to the previous reasons for refusal, and I'll indicate these on the upcoming plans. Just quickly on the constraints of the site, there is a tree preservation order area and there's a protected beach in the front garden / driveway. Arboricultural information was submitted with the application indicating how the beach can be protected for the duration of the construction. This has been reviewed by BCP's arboricultural officers. The information is considered acceptable and a condition would be attached to any favourable decision to enforce the implementation of the arboricultural method statement. These are the refused elevation plans of the previous scheme. You can see here the flat roof design relating to reason for refusal 1 of that application, and it was this window and this balcony here that was considered to result in overlooking. This is the existing elevations of the dwelling. This is the proposed site plan. The proposal utilises the existing footprint of the dwelling. It's not enlarging in that regard. It's slightly reducing due to the demolition of an existing conservatory to the side, which is about here. And this is the proposed elevations of this application. I'll firstly start with how the proposal has responded to the previous reasons for refusal. A more traditional roof form is now proposed, which is hipped and pitched, which is common in the street scene and therefore would reflect local patterns of development in this regard. Reason for refusal 1 of the previous scheme is therefore considered to have been positively overcome. Secondly, the previous concerns of overlooking have been responded to, as the amount of glazing to the rear has been significantly reduced. This is indicated on the plan. You can see in the orange dashed lines there, and the balcony has also been omitted. This reason for refusal is therefore considered to have been overcome, and the proposal would not amount to harmful overlooking to neighbouring properties. I'll now go through the assessment of the proposal and neighbouring amenities. With regards to privacy, the ground floor windows are generally in the same position of the existing dwelling, albeit enlarged in some instances, such as here on the southwest elevation. It's not considered that these windows would amount to any overlooking concerns to neighbouring properties. And then at first floor level, amendments were accepted under this application to reduce the amount of glazing at the rear due to overlooking concerns, as I've just discussed. The windows are in a similar position and size of the existing dormer windows to the rear of the property, with the outlook not material different to the existing situation. And that's these windows here. The first floor windows and the side elevations would be obscure glaze to protect the amenity of neighbouring properties. These would serve bathrooms and would be secured under condition. It's therefore considered the proposal would not materially harm the privacy of neighbouring properties. The massing of the dwelling would increase by a significant amount due to the increase in the height of the dwelling to become 2 stories. The ridge height would be increased by 1.5 metres. This purple line shows the existing ridge height. It is noted from neighbour objections regarding the overbearing appearance of the dwelling on the neighbouring number 33 Springfield Crescent, and this too is mentioned in the call-in from Councillor Harman. Whilst it is accepted the massing of the dwelling is increasing and number 33 is set at a lower level, this is not considered to result in an overbearing appearance to the neighbour. This is due to the existing separation distances, together with the windows on the side elevation of number 33 that face the site, consisting of non-habitable rooms or roof lights. The rooms that these roof lights serve have secondary outlooks to the front and rear, which ensures the dwelling would not appear overbearing or materially harm the outlook of number 33. It's also noted comments regarding the visual appearance of the dwelling from the front door of the property. However, as this is not a habitable room and the habitable rooms of the property would be unharmed, this is not material to the assessment. It should also be noted similar developments have been accepted in the street scene, for example, as I've shown at number 27, where the height of the dwelling was increased there by 1 metre. The same can be said for number 29, with the proposal not resulting in harm to the amenity of this neighbour in terms of privacy, outlook, or appearing overbearing, also counting that this number 29 is at a higher level. In terms of shadowing, with regards to number 29, this neighbour would experience an increase in shadowing due to the increase in height. However, this would not be too dissimilar from the existing situation, given the footprint is not enlarging. The increase in shading would mostly be over number 29's roof, where there are no roof lights, and therefore would not be material harmful to the amenity of this neighbour. Number 33 would not see a harmful increase in shading, given the orientation of this dwelling, which is to the southwest. In terms of appearance and design, whilst the proposal uses modern materials which do not match that of the existing, given the evolving character of the street scene and the materials that are present, this would not be materially harmful and would reflect local patterns of development. The proposal is therefore considered to preserve the character of the area and neighbouring amenity in compliance with policy PP 27 of the Poole Local Plan. These are the proposed floor plans. The existing 3-bed chalet would become a 4-bed, 2-storey dwelling. No harm has been identified and the previous reasons for refusal have been overcome. The proposal complies with relevant local planning policies and is supported by internal consultees subject to condition. Therefore, the recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you. And now we have speakers in, first of all, in objection. We have, first of all, David Alderson, who is in the room with us and is coming to the microphone, followed online by James Kane. And between you, Mr. Alderson and Mr. Kane, you have 5 minutes, and we're very strict.
Thank you very much. Conscious that we don't have as long as the planning officer. It's actually James Kane going first, so he'll go first.
Good morning, Chair. My name is James Kane, MRCPI planning consultant. I act on behalf of the owners of 33 Springfield Crescent, which is a property...
Sorry, can I just interrupt? You're not at all clear. I don't know whether anything can be done about it.
Is that better, Chair?
Oh, much better. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Could you start again? And we'll start the timing again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Chair. James Kane, MRTI planning consultant. I act on behalf of the owners of 33 Springfield Crescent, which is the property most impacted by this proposal, and you will hear from Mr. Alderson shortly. However, I'm aware that due to the tight-knit nature of the development in this location, that a further half dozen properties will also be impacted with some level of harm caused by this proposal. Cumulatively, I feel that the balance remains easily on the side of this application being materially harmful to neighbouring amenity and the street scene. In short, the amendments since the last refusal have not gone far enough to overcome the previous reasons for refusal. I also feel that there is a solution here, and local residents have already agreed and are open to work with the applicant to find a design that will tip the scales towards a development that could be supported. At para 8 of the report, your officer states the character of the road is evolving, but this relates to larger properties on higher land further up the crescent, and with far fewer immediate neighbours to impact than the subject scheme. At para 30 of the report, the officer accepts that the proposal would result in a significant increase in the massing and bulk of the dwelling. This is justified by the officer due to the retention of the sloping ridgeline, but even by the officer's own measurements, the ridge is 2.7 metres higher than number 33, and this isn't comparing eggs with eggs. The ridgeline at the proposal runs almost across the full width of the site, whereas number 33 is a modest hip roof with the bulk and mass at 90 degrees of the street. The visual impact is clear to see on the final page of the photo montage document that was sent to members yesterday. The other main issue is the overbearing nature of the proposal to number 33. Your officer accepts that the extension will be highly visible from the side elevation of number 33, and that the proposal would increase the massing of the dwelling towards a neighbour. Clearly, the officer accepts that there is some harm. We say the harm is much greater than your officer says, and that is very clear, and I invite you to agree with us. The proposal is wholly contrary to 1A, 1C and 2 of Local Plan PP 27. The increase in height and bulk is simply on the wrong side of the dwelling. It should be located further up the slope on the opposite side of number 31, and that would create a better terrace effect, more in keeping with the topography, and reduce the real-life harm that will be caused to number 33. I'll pass you over to David.
What I want to do is share with the committee the harmful impact in human terms that this planned large building will have if approved in its current form. The planning officer acknowledges a significant increase in the bulk and massing of the planned building and that there would be an increase in shadowing, but then gives the opinion that shadowing not to the extent that it would result in harmful loss of daylight and sunlight, with the existing separation distance being adequate, according to her. I think that, as well as illustrating how overbearing and oppressive the building is per se, the photo montage, 3D models and planning officer's narrative show that we have a 2-storey, 4-bedroom building just 4 metres away from us, with a high-pitched roof already 1.5 metres above the existing and nearly 3 metres above our own ridge height, and that as a result it will plunge our hallway, downstairs bathroom and upstairs main bedroom and bathroom into all-day darkness, requiring all-day artificial light. I also need to emphasise that a 4-metre distance from the lower side of nearly 1 metre drop in land, which is where we are at number 33, means that we're up against the impact of an equivalent 3-storey building when the high-pitched roof is taken into account. I put it to you as a committee that this is not an adequate separation distance, and that an equivalent 3-storey height from our ground level will be very overbearing and very oppressive. This large structure will also take away our privacy. Like our neighbours at 3, 3A, 2 and 1 Dansey Close and 29 Springfield Crescent, all of our gardens will be directly overlooked into, and for all of our neighbours, their bedrooms, living rooms and kitchens will also be looked into. But we're not NIMBYs, neither are our neighbours. We understand that 31 Springfield Crescent needs to be developed. All we have ever asked is for the negative outlook, overshadowing, overbearing and oppressive nature of this design to be reduced and adapted with reasonable adjustments made. James Kane and I think that we have made the case for you to refuse these plans on the grounds of it being overbearing and against PP 27. If you do approve this planning application, it will set a harmful precedent for this bungalow residential part of Springfield Crescent and Dansey Close, adjoining the Ashley Cross Conservation Area. We ask you to refuse the plan for a positive reason, to enable us to work with the developer's architect to make reasonable adjustments to his plans. This would also represent neighbours working positively with developers in what is already an overdeveloped area. We think this could become a model for a constructive way of working and prevent future planning objections. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we move on to a submission from the applicant, Ian Forster, who is also with us and will be coming to the microphone. And similarly to the last speakers, you have 5 minutes.
The application under discussion today is a follow-up to an earlier proposal to enlarge and refurbish the existing dormer bungalow. The initial submission featured a predominantly flat roof design along with a balcony and large expanses of glazing. Prior to submitting the original application, the applicants consulted with neighbouring properties, providing an opportunity for them to review and comment on the proposals at an early stage. The neighbours chose not to comment, which was entirely their prerogative. However, This consultation could have been an ideal point for them to raise any concerns, allowing us to consider any changes requested. After we received a decision for the original submission, we used the decision notice as a basis for improving the proposal, creating a design that addressed the case officer's concerns while remaining sympathetic to the character of the property and the surrounding area. A shallow pitch roof was added to the design, in keeping with the original house and other properties in the immediate street scene. The balcony was removed and replaced with a window in the same location as the existing dormer window. Additionally, the large expanses of glazing were reduced to eliminate any perceived overlooking issues. In response to the case officer's request, we also stepped in the first floor rear elevation to increase the interface distance between the property and those on Dancy Close. During the application period, we were informed that the neighbours had raised objections to the revised scheme through Councillor Harman. This was disappointing, as we had already made efforts to consult them directly. To avoid the committee process and as a gesture of goodwill, we once again offered to meet with the neighbours to address their concerns. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, this meeting did not materialise. It is evident that my client has made considerable efforts to engage constructively with the neighbours. The road is clearly a developing street scene with numerous dwellings already enlarged with additional floors, which stand adjacent to existing bungalows. We're not the first to apply for this, and we certainly won't be the last. Both the designated planning officer and their line manager have thoroughly reviewed the proposal in light of local and national planning policies, and they have confirmed that the current design complies with these guidelines. Should the application be unsuccessful today, we will progress with a permitted development right to rise application, which will result in a taller and larger building, which will further exacerbate the concerns raised by the neighbours.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't realise you'd finished. You didn't say the end or anything, not that people usually do. And now online we have the ward councillor Emily Harman, who called in this application.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking you can hear me.
We can very clearly, thank you.
Wonderful. I'm really sorry I can't be there in person. I do much prefer to be in person for these things, but I'm pleased I can join online. So I called this application in, and I will start by saying I do agree with all the points that have been raised by both James Kane and Mr. Alderson, who, as we know, are the closest neighbour to the number 31 and also the planning consultant acting on his behalf. I just want to make the point that I don't call planning applications in lightly. I'm very aware of the resources required to put on a planning meeting and the time of officers and members involved. And I will only do so when I speak to residents if I do believe there are material concerns that mean the poor local plan or the NPPF are not being adhered to in part. And as is evidenced in my call-in, my biggest concerns here are relating to PP27. Part C of that states that buildings need to be compatible with surrounding uses and would not result in a harmful impact upon amenity for both local residents and future occupiers, considering levels of sunlight and daylight. And I think Mr. Alderson made it very clear in his representation just what impact would be caused by such a significant building being built so close next door. I have also been inside number 31, and I'm in agreement that there would be significant harm caused. The other elements of PP27 that I believe are not being adhered to with regards to this application relate to the overbearing and oppressive nature of the building, and also bulking and massing, including that of the roof. And I think one of the things that wasn't very clear for members from the photos taken, I think there was one photo that Sophia showed in her presentation that helped to visualize just what a steep road Springfield Crescent is, and number 31 is significantly higher than number 33, and so this increase in height not only is an increase in the current property that's there, because of the levels involved, it really is significantly higher, and where the front door is of number 33, it will be completely dwarfed as you come out by the new property if it were to be built as per the plans. And I know as a committee, that you are looking at the word harm. We're thinking about the harmful impact. And I do think that frustratingly, that can be a somewhat subjective concept. So what one person's understanding of harm is can be quite different to another. And I do think consideration needs to be given that you've heard from the closest neighbour, you've heard from a professional and myself as ward councillor who have all been on site and been inside number 31. And we can see firsthand that if the plans as presented today are sort of passed and built, there really will be a significant harmful impact every day now onwards for the people who live there. And I do want that to be bared in mind as you deliberate and discuss today. But I don't want to end on a negative. As has been mentioned through several of the people speaking this morning, I think it's accepted that the street scene is changing. You know, we know that lots of the bungalows and the chalets are becoming family homes, and no one here is objecting to development of the site. What we want is the opportunity to work with the developers so that it works for all. So what I ask today is opportunity for the plans to be amended, not to decrease the footprint of the property, but to address the current design so that it works with the topography of the road to reduce the overbearing and I feel oppressive impact that it will have on not just 33, although most significantly on 33, but also the other properties that have been mentioned this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harman. So now I'm opening it up to questions from members of the committee about what we've heard, seen, been told. And I'm going to jump in first because I've got a couple. First of all, can you clarify, Ms Dykes, about the difference in the ground level between the site of 31 and 33? Because that's been raised as an issue.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I couldn't give specific measurements in that for topography. We do have topographic surveys. I think in my case officer report, I make reference to the ridge height difference.
This is the ground level.
Yeah, I couldn't give the exact answer of that. I might be able to find out from the topographic survey, but I can't give specific.
Thank you, because a figure has been given, and I'm seeking clarification as to the accuracy of that figure. I have no reason to doubt it, let me say, but
yeah, it's something we have to check. So.
Yeah.
Chair, I've got a plan ahead of me where it has datum points across the site. So towards 29, Springfield in the middle of the site, datum's 20.71, and on the opposite side of the site, it's 19.91. So we do have plans with the data levels on. We don't have the resource within the planning team to go out and double check those measurements, so we have to take them as submitted.
So can you say the figures again? So we've got the differential.
So I'm taking it just to the front of the proposed building towards number 29. The datum there is right against that boundary, 20.71. And if you go straight across, it is 19.91. So I haven't got the datum figures for the sites either side.
Yes, that's the key thing, is the site either side.
So on here, I've got by 29, and the corner of that building towards the back is 24.57, and to the front of that is 24.58.
So doesn't sound like much difference. So when you look at it, it's much more. Looks more, yeah. It's much.
That's not right. That means sorry, no, I'm saying there's no more for datum.
Chair, can I just ask a question on that? If the applicant has had a topographical survey with actual numbers on, can we not have that presented to us?
It hasn't been. I assume it won't have been verified, but I'm open to suggestions.
It's online.
There is. Yes, sorry, there was one submitted by the objector, so I can't clarify whether that's correct. And I think Katie was referring to the one submitted under this application by the applicant.
But I mean, I hope we've all been to see the site, and when you're there, you can see that there is quite a difference.
But I was just going to say, we don't seem to be able to prove that the one from the applicant is accurate either. So how relevant is it in that case?
I think we can only believe what we've seen on site. Yes. And I assume we've all been to see it.
Yeah.
I would hope so. The other question I have is, there's been mention of continuing under permitted development. What could actually be done under permitted development?
So the permitted development in reference that Ian Foster was referencing to is there's a prior approval you can apply for where you add additional stories to the dwelling. That does require an application of prior approval, so it's not considered a strong fallback position as prior approval hasn't been given, but it is something that could be done also under permitted development. You could do rear extensions and increasing the footprint, which of course this application is not doing, but we're referencing there is a prior approval where you can add additional stories to the dwelling.
But as things stand, that hasn't been given, hasn't been applied for, so we don't know.
No, that's not been applied for.
Okay, thank you. Right, other committee members, any questions? Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. There was mention from the ward councillor that they'd been inside the neighbouring property. My question is of the planning officer, when looking at light, etc. Have they actually been inside the other properties neighbouring?
Could you help us on that?
No, I haven't been into neighbouring properties, no.
Tainton?
It's not a statutory requirement for officers to go into neighbouring properties. They can, if they feel it's useful, do that, of course. But we are relying on what's submitted before us to make assessment on daylight and sunlight. And what wasn't mentioned during the presentation was that essentially when we're assessing daylight and sunlight, it is objective. So we use the BRE's daylight and sunlight standards, the building research establishments, and the rule of thumb that they pose is a 45-degree angle for shadowing on the horizontal and a vertical panes. And if there is a conflict in the midpoint of the affected window, then there is a potential for loss of daylight and sunlight. Having looked at it in assessment of this case, it doesn't look like that there is a conflict in that transect. So therefore there wouldn't be an adverse loss of daylight sunlight. Bear in mind that the BRE, unfortunately in planning, is fairly, it does allow for a loss of daylight sunlight. The test of where it's harmful isn't as quite as strict as perhaps we would like it to be.
Thank you, Chair, through you. That's obviously addressing the sunlight, but it doesn't address the subjective feel of the massing of the building from inside another building, which is proposed.
I think that's more of a comment than a question, actually. So, any more questions? Yes, Councillor Canavan.
Can I just ask about process? So, notwithstanding what the applicant has said this morning, clearly there has been, I'm assuming, clearly there's been some liaison between the planning department and the applicant in response to the previous application being turned down, which has resulted in this amended proposal. I'm just wanting to check that, notwithstanding what's been said this morning about the attempts to liaise with the residents, whether there's been any check by the planning team with residents about whether or not they are satisfied that this revised application meets their wishes. So I understand what the applicant says, but what I'm trying to get to is what efforts or what work has been done within planning to try and ensure that whilst you may be satisfied with this application, whether residents are content that it meets their previous objections. Thank you.
Can someone
Thank you.
come in on that? I, depending on what you say, I might have something to say as well.
Okay, thank you. So all the comments are taken into consideration by myself through the objections. I read them all, and my assessment is of the plans submitted to me against our local planning policies. And as I've gone through in my presentation, I have not identified any harm. When I was in contact with the applicant, I was told of possible arrangements to discuss with the neighbours, but as discussed, I don't think this came to fruition, and that is out of my control. So I was assessing the scheme based on the plans and against our local planning policies in that respect.
So just wish to add that unfortunately in planning, we are, fortunately or not, we are making decisions in the public interest. We have to make our planning decisions in accordance with the development plan or any other material planning considerations. And unfortunately, general public wants or not wants doesn't form part of that consideration. So as just the officer just said, that she has had to assess this against the development plan and other material considerations, and unfortunately popularity isn't material to planning.
Oh, Monica.
Really quickly to add to this, from my own experience, planning officers deal with agents and applicants seeking amendments. They obviously take into consideration any objections or comments from the public. However, we do not liaise with them directly to make the development more acceptable for them. If, as the DM manager said, the development is acceptable in accordance with the development plan, then that is satisfactory for the planning officer to recommend approval with conditions. So as long as it is acceptable, as is in this case recommended, we would not go above and beyond further to make it more acceptable, as wished perhaps by the residents, because it is acceptable as it is.
Thank you. So, any more questions? Yes, Councillor Cameron.
Okay, I don't know if this is perhaps a daft question, but it looks to me like the pitch of the roof is exceptionally high. Is it higher than average, normal, or expected? Or is it just kind of a bit of an optical illusion? Because it just does appear to be very, very high.
I wouldn't say it's any higher than normal. I think because the dwelling is quite angular, if that's the correct term to use. If you see in the photos and if you've been to the site, it's angular, and I think the plans are kind of showing that. I think it's more the plans and rather how it would look actually when built out. I wouldn't say it's any higher than normal developments.
So, any further questions? No? So we'll move on to debate. Should this be approved or shouldn't it, is what we have to decide. Councillor Sidaway.
I think the test for me is whether the previous refusal reasons have been taken into consideration enough, and I'm not convinced they have. So the balcony isn't there, but there's windows instead. The window's been made smaller on the side, but you can still see out of it and do the overlooking. And I don't think the scale of it has come down from last time significantly enough. I get that the flat roof is not there, which might make it look slightly less. So for me, I don't think it's passed the PP27 test.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor Shallen.
Thank you. Yeah, I do know this road quite well, having been a previous ward councillor. And I kind of do sympathise with both sides of this. It is an evolving street scene, and yeah, there is an acceptance that needs to be developed. But for me, the harm still seems to be there. It does feel as though it's going to be overbearing on that side, so close to that property. It's because of the elevation, and because of just that sheer mass. Honestly, if I was that person who was having that put up next to me, I would be slightly alarmed and I would be opposed to it. And I just feel that for me is a straight away, even with a knowledge of planning law, would make me think, I'm not sure that's quite right. How is that allowed? And I would actually question that on this committee and say, I think from an overbearing point of view, it's still there. And I think that is still evidence of harm. And for that reason, I don't think I could support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with Councillor Challoner. I actually like the look of it, and I'm really not adverse to evolving street scenes. And I think, if it's going to be a more attractive looking building, then go for it. I'm all for that. But I think in this particular case, it does appear to be overbearing. It's too close to the neighbouring properties. I think that's the problem. It's much too close and it will have that overbearing effect. If there was more space in between, it wouldn't be anywhere, it wouldn't be a huge issue at all, I don't believe. But it is too close and it is overbearing.
Thank you. So we've had three comments all going in the same direction. We haven't yet had a motion, nor have we had further comments, possibly giving different points of view. So, Councillor Challoner.
In the absence of any other comments forthcoming, I would actually like to propose that we reject this and we go against the officer recommendation to approve.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Challoner. So we have a motion to refuse proposed by Councillor Challoner, seconded by Councillor Clements. Does anyone else wish to speak at this point? Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to understand what our reasons for refusal would. I understand it's PP27, but could someone help me understand what would be put forward as the reason for refusal, like specifically in the words that we would be using, please?
Yes, I think we've heard one, overbearing. Are there further reasons? Councillor Sidaway.
I'm looking at the refusal from last time, and I don't think the words would need to change particularly.
No.
I mean, it looks quite, it says the proposed scheme would fail to respect and relate to the existing buildings. I think that's still true. And then it goes on to say, not fall within the provisions of PP27, the proposed scheme would materially harmful impact on the privacy and amenities of the occupants of the neighbouring properties. And I think that's what we just said. So I think the words would be exactly the same as last time, to be honest.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Farquhar.
I would just bring the committee's attention to point 29 in the report for the actual measurements, that the eaves height is 3 metres higher, and that the maximum ridge height would actually increase by 1.5 metres if we're talking about massing and overbearing. So that's material measurements that's identified in the officer's report.
Okay, so I think we're ready to move to a vote. So those who wish to refuse this application, contrary to the officer recommendation, for the reasons the Councillor Sidaway has given, possibly with the addition of overbearing specifically, if you wish to refuse this application, please vote now.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in support.
Those who wish to approve it, and those abstaining. So that application is refused by, I think, 8 to 2 abstentions. So 8 in favour of refusal and 2 abstentions. So, officers, are you happy that you have adequate reasons to give? Mainly from the previous refusal?
We'll have a look and maybe tweak those.
Yeah.
But, with approval through you, Chair, have those approved for refusal of the particular wording.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'll close the meeting now for the recording, but could members of the committee just stay behind for a couple of minutes, please? Thank you.